Hi, I'm Amber and my partner Julie. We are going to talk about Buddhism in the afterlife. So that's basically going to be our group presentation. And I think afterlife itself is a really interesting topic because we never know, what's going to happen after we die until it actually happens, knowing that our lives are very short and in the end all we can do is just live the best of every day and talk about more of how we can be more comfortable with this subject because not many people are comfortable because a lot of us are in denial. But at the same time, afterlife is unfortunate. It's something that's life-changing, of course, whether it's to our family members, to parents, to our friends, to anybody that's really close to us. It's a really unfortunate event. So, the conceptions of the afterlife. The afterlife has different beliefs in what happens after death. So like Christianity, Hinduism, Jainism, Taoism, all these religions have a different aspect of the afterlife and what happens after we die. So we are going to talk about Buddhism and the afterlife, which that is our topic. In Buddhism, however, reincarnation is based on the person's karma. So bad karma will only lead to a continuous cycle. If, for whatever reason you do have bad karma, it's probably because you're doing all the wrong things. For example, like stealing, killing, working in professions that aren't really to the exception of Buddhism, and how it would not only lead to bad karma, but eventually would lead to consequences even after life, even after you die. So this cycle is also known as samsara. So in order to break samsara, one must obtain good karma. Good karma, you can do little things such as like volunteering, helping out somebody who's struggling with homework, like tutoring. You can always just basically have the right mindset and be compassionate towards others. Treat everybody with respect. Treat others as if you want to be treated. And good karma will then lead to nirvana. And the ultimate goal for nirvana is the removal of desire. And the removal of desire is something that, we all have desires. We all have like little addictions here and there. But in order for us to obtain that nirvana, that higher state of mind, we must sacrifice some things so that we can have a better mindset to become something that's greater than ourselves. And also to end suffering and reach enlightenment. That's another meaning for nirvana itself. So it starts with the Four Noble Truths. So for the first noble truth is life is suffering. In other words, we have to accept that life will always life will always throw things. They will always throw obstacles our way, and we have to learn how to overcome that. So it could be like illness, old age, it can be separation, maybe, there are just things that we can't surpass, but eventually it's only temporary. So, and the second noble truth is the cause of suffering is desire. So just as I was saying before, the ultimate goal is the removal of desire. Number 3 is the cure for suffering is to remove desire. And the Four Noble Truth is to remove desire and follow the Eightfold Path. So again, it starts with the Four Noble Truths and mastering the Noble Eightfold Path. And nirvana is reach to the ones of prajna, or wisdom. So eventually, when you're old, you have all this knowledge about life. You lived your life as a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult, a middle age, and soon to be like next thing you know, you're approaching old age. That is part of suffering, but at the same time, you are at a higher level, as in based on what you already know about life and that wisdom that you attained. So Siddhartha's enlightenment, the Buddha had 4 sights before searching for nirvana. So his very first sight was realization of suffering. So when he sees an old man appear before him, he asks his charioteer just basically the whereabouts of the old man, and also, why he appears the way he looks. And the charioteer would say that everyone gets old, everyone will eventually get to that point where they're not young anymore, they become weak, they become just overall deteriorate. So the second sight was a sick man. Siddhartha asked his charioteer about the man's condition, and the charioteer would say, it happens to many people. So it doesn't happen to just one person, 2 people, it happens to everyone. So everyone eventually will get old, and everyone, will also go through illnesses, diseases, they will get sick. The third sight was death. Again, his charioteer assures him that everyone suffers, everyone will die. The fourth and final sight was a wandering ascetic. So this ascetic accepted the concept of the afterlife. So at the same time, when the ascetic sees and already has lived his life and realizes that our time is short, he already accepts the fact that after we die, that's pretty much what happens. It's something that we can't escape from. It's something that we all have to face eventually. So with all 4 sights, he left his wife and son to find enlightenment. And Siddhartha went through many obstacles, including a battle with Mara. Mara's a demon that Siddhartha had fought because the Mara tried to distract him. The Mara tried to distract him with an assault from his armies wherever he was at, wherever Siddhartha was at, and the people that were defending him altogether was his army. Mara's armies were there to attack them, and also Mara sent his daughters to try to seduce Siddhartha. And this was all during when Siddhartha was trying to meditate and have a really good focus and concentration. Regardless of what was happening around him, he didn't use physical force, he didn't use words or anything. It was just meditating and concentrating just on himself and how to just make peace with everything around himself and whatever was happening outside of him as well. And however, despite all that, his concentration was beyond great. It was amazing. Now, I'm also going to talk about the 6 realms of samsara. So, like what I said before, like earlier in the presentation, how Christianity, basically they believe just heaven and hell. So, Christianity basically has only like 2 realms, versus Buddhism, there are 6 realms. Samsara, again, is that cycle. In this continuous cycle, you are either in one of these realms. So in the afterlife, you are reborn in one of 6 realms. The first realm is the heavenly realm. It attains nirvana. That is basically where, unless you have really good karma, that is where you'll be. So like Buddha, he was one of the few who attained that higher state of mind, that nirvana. And eventually, he became in the like after he had passed away, he was in the heavenly realm. Like a place where all Buddhists want to be. So the next realm is the Ashura realm, which is the demon. So basically, to be reborn as an Ashura, they have supernatural powers. But for the most part, demons are very bitter, they're very angry, they're full of greed, they're just not good things to be if you were stuck in that realm. And also, they tend to cause trouble for the human realm, so they are most likely to be possessions of illnesses and other negative entities. The third realm is the animal realm. So it's not the worst place to be, but it's also not the greatest. It's only because animals prey on one another. So it's not the best to be, but also in rare cases, you can try to reach to the human realm. So you could be from animal to a human, just really depends on, because animals, they're pretty smart to a certain extent, but like I said, in rare cases, they can always move up to the human realm. The hell realm, which is somewhere you don't want to be, it's basically what it sounds like, it's hell. So in the hell realm, it's either extremely cold or it's extremely hot place. Somewhere where basically you are suffering for eternal, and in order to get to that realm, you must have, killed your parents, or possibly if you had a Buddhist teacher, if you killed him, automatic, you're in the hell realm. The ghost realm, you will always be hungry. So you're a restless spirit, which is also called the pretas. So basically the pretas, they have very large stomachs and very small throats, and the reason why they have large stomachs is that no matter what they eat, they will always be hungry. They're just hungry, lonely ghosts that will always be, in a very sad part of the realm. And the human realm is where you want to be. Currently, that's basically where we all are, is in the human realm. And so the human realm is where you want to be, because that is basically the easy way to attain nirvana, to move from the human realm to the heavenly realm. Now, and also, I also learned that wherever you are, you could be Ashura, you could be in the ghost, human, heavenly, well, excluding heavenly, because no matter what nirvana, you're always going to stay there. But if it's any of the other 5 realms, you can easily switch from one realm to another after you die. And a lot of times, the spot that you're in is not permanent. So that's also something that you have to look out for, is that none of these realms, or at least maybe the heavenly realm, they're not permanent spots. So you can easily switch from one realm to another. So the Buddhist funeral traditions. So each region of Asia varies their funeral traditions. Japan ceremonies have bodies that are cremated. So the bones are pressed into ashes and are given to the family. So like in Southeast Asia, Japan, China, they all have very, very similar traditions, just a little different. Not that much of a difference, but they have, different traditions they follow. So in Southeast Asia, families can choose their loved ones to be cremated or buried. Let's say if you come from a wealthy family, more than likely your family will put you in a temple. And mainly you're in there for, I want to say, about less or more than a year, just really depends. And also, after that time has come, then you can also be then you will be cremated at the end. So your body will still be, in a form of a human, obviously, but after about a year or so, you will be cremated. So Ramon says, so they can show their love and respect for the dead before the deceased is cremated. In China, ceremonies range from 40 to 49 days. So they give you this long period to basically just pray and relive all the good times that they've had with you as their family, which is, again, it's an unfortunate event, but it's something that they will always remember you by as a really good person. And after this period, the family will choose whether the body should be cremated or buried. So this is my half of the presentation, and now I'm gonna take this to Julie.
My name is Julie, and this is the second part of Buddhism and Afterlife. All right, and what I'm going to talk about is the Bardo, and it's a very common tradition, a part of both the Tibetan and Northern Eastern and Northern Chinese Buddhism, and it involves the funeral process and the stages of the afterlife in terms of how the body is treated. All right, and according to traditions, the spirit goes through a three-stage process lasting 40 to 49 days, and this is usually called Babardo, and it's where this process determines if the spirit shall enter nirvana or continue on the process of samsara, or the repeat and reincarnation cycle. And the bardos are critical for determining if the body has earned enough karma throughout their life to break the cycle of nirvana or break the cycle of reincarnation. And I apologize for butchering these. This is the first stage, and it's called the Chikai Bardo, or the Bardo of dying. And during this process, when the body starts to decay through illness or through wounds or whatever happens to the body, monks will take care of them, and medical professionals will also as well. And during this time, the mind will reflect upon what karma they've achieved, and which also leads to the second bardo, which is the Chonyid. And this is the bardo of the luminous mind. So with this bardo, it is a very complex situation that occurs where the mind undergoes hallucinations and dream-like stances as the body starts dying. The mind first has to come to terms with the idea that they're first not going to be able to inhabit this lifetime of theirs anymore, and also must come to terms with that they must be reincarnated as well. This bardo also involves hallucinations of all of their past life in terms of how much karma they've achieved and how much karma they've accumulated, and it's almost like a picturesque flashback of everything that they've ever done since birth. And this is supposed to help reflection of if they've acquired good karma or bad karma and what it actually means, which also leads to the third which is the Sidpa Bardo, and the process of the Bardo of rebirth. And this is also after the body and mind have left. This is monks determine if the mind will enter reincarnation or if it will go through nirvana instead. And through all three of these, the body will slowly decay over time, and it's only through this third stage that the body is truly departed from the life. And now I want to move on to an actual definition of what nirvana actually means. So through some research, nirvana is meant to mean the freedom from suffering, and often what is common throughout Buddhist traditions is the Eightfold Path. And what the Buddha taught was he taught that through Buddhism you can escape suffering of the earthly world and all of its hardships and its unpleasant experiences. And through the practice of achieving liberation from suffering, could you truly enter the state of nirvana. And it's more of a state in terms of not an actual place such as heaven or hell in Christianity, because suffering can still be experienced in the ordinary world, and it can still, even after awakening has been reached, but the body and mind does not wither like when a normal body has been undergoes through uh, living through these hardships. Perhaps just like the Buddha himself, he lived even past his awakening period, and he underwent a bunch of unpleasant experiences. Yet he did not suffer personally based on these experiences, and his body did not wither because of them. And so nirvana is more considered a state of clarity and more of a detachment from the actual emotional reality of the world, and more of a kind of uplifting above all suffering, no matter what happens, even before death. Though it's what I talked about previously, it's more common that the soul will the spirit will enter nirvana, in the state of nirvana, after they have passed. And nirvana is not technically a concept that should be very incomprehensible to many people, because throughout our daily lives, freedom from suffering and hardship is easily achieved, and some small awakenings, such as trying to keep your mind busy from daily hardships such as mental stress, maybe financial stress, family stress, but it's nothing in comparison to the actual beauty and relief of paranirvana, or truly the true awakening of nirvana. And with that, I'm going to move on now to a comparison of the conceptions of the afterlife. So, when comparing the conceptions of afterlife, you first have to understand which afterlives that we're talking about and which religions that we're talking about and trying to compare. Because comparison to Buddhism, the three that I've chosen are very starkly different and very unique in their own retrospects, but also very similar to Buddhism and to themselves. So the first one that I want to talk about is Christianity, which is the one I was raised on. And it is the conception, they share the conception of heaven and hell with Islam and Judaism, though Judaism is kind of a weird one in that sense. Christianity believes that there is a heaven and hell, and that the dead are to be judged by God, even when their soul has or has not perished from their body. Usually after the body has been after the body has passed and the soul has left their body, the body will be either cremated or buried, depending on what the family wishes. And it's more of a traditional sense to be buried, as it's kind of always been a tradition amongst Christians, though it kind of depends based on the subsection, such as I was raised as a Catholic, and it doesn't necessarily, being cremated or buried is not necessarily as huge as trying to live the best life that you can, and trying to be able to get into heaven based on the sins of your life and trying to live in God's name, in a sense. And that's very similar to that of Islam, which is the paradise and hell conception, where paradise is sort of a principle, is very similar to that of heaven, and it's very a kind of parallel universe in where it exists at the same time that Earth does. And that is also the same for Christianity, where hell and heaven exist at the same time, but we can never see them. And through Islam, only the mercy of God or Allah shall determine those whose souls receive salvation. And with Islam, the soul does never really depart the body until the last day, or the day where Allah uplifts all the souls that have ever departed and brings them to live in paradise by his side, or to suffer eternally in the fires of hell. And with Islam, the conception is that the soul will still suffer despite not leaving the body, and will suffer in the graves, depending on even just a glimpse of what their fate is. So those who have been judged already to live in paradise will be at peace until the day that they arise into paradise, and those who have been judged to suffer will be in immense pain before they enter hell. Now, Judaism I chose because it's a very interesting concept, because there's not much that is known about the process of afterlife and the resurrection of their souls, though they do believe that there is a sort of world to come. It's very unknown if this is a heaven or hell, or if the resurrection by God is something that could be really understood as a parallel world existing at the same time as Earth, or is it if it's more of a place that exists after the Earth has almost distinguished itself, or if it's a alternate universe. It's not quite clear, and it's not quite made clear what it is in the Torah either. However, we can understand that that there is a world to come, but it's more that Judaism focuses on the earthly troubles more than the afterlife itself, and because of that, Judaism is a refusal to burn bodies. It's more they have to be buried, and so that the body can be cared for more than the spirit itself. And although Buddhism differs quite differently to these, as Buddhism does not really have a conception of heaven or hell, it's more of a state of being that the soul enters and a process of reincarnation, as Christianity, Islam, and Judaism do not have a process of which that their souls can be reincarnated. It is more that it's more similar to Hinduism, where it's kind of in the same region where Buddhism also arose, in the where Buddhism kind of came from Nepal and India. Hinduism also came from that area. As Hinduism also is, even though it's not on my side, I will still compare it. That Hinduism does believe in the resurrection of the soul through reincarnation, such as the samsara, but it's also dependent upon deities and spirits as well. All right, here is the conclusion, and let me wrap up all of the slides from the beginning and the end. So, what we know of afterlife for Buddhism is it's a breaking free from the cycle of rebirth and to find freedom and enlightenment through the awakening of nirvana. And through this awakening, it is the escape and fulfillment of the Eightfold Path and the Noble Truths, depending on what you believe and what you choose to follow. And from this enlightenment, you reach the state of no suffering and the freedom from earthly tethers. And for the afterlife, you are born after the body has departed and the soul has entered the process of reincarnation. You are born into one of the 6 realms of samsara. And through this, it also goes back to the processes of the bardo, and if the spirit has entered the processes of reincarnation, and if the spirit will undergo reincarnation again into one of the 6 realms. And the heavenly realm, though, is more kind of where those who have entered nirvana kind of stay instead of going back into reincarnation. However, in death, many Buddhist traditions follow the process of bardo, like I said, and to determine if the spirit is being reincarnated. And those 3 stages determine if this body will enter reincarnation or not. And finally, breaking the cycle of rebirth is based on karma and usually following the teachings of the Dharma and the teachings of the Buddha. And based on these teachings, you can really achieve enlightenment and a better understanding of reincarnation and how that affects you in your daily life. Right, and here are our resources. There are 7 of them, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much.